Most men fall into one of two categories when it comes to flirting. There's the guy who's so stiff and overly careful that every compliment sounds like he rehearsed it in the bathroom mirror for 40 minutes. And then there's the guy who mistakes intensity for charm and ends up making a woman feel like she needs to find the nearest exit. Both men think they're doing it right. Neither is even close. Flirting isn't a performance, and it isn't a strategy. It's a specific kind of social energy, light, playful, slightly unpredictable. And when it's done well, it doesn't even feel like flirting. It just feels like the most fun conversation she's had all week. That's the target. The awkward guy is in his head. The creepy guy is ignoring her signals. The man who actually gets this right is present, relaxed, and not treating the interaction like a job interview with romantic consequences. This video is the breakdown. What flirting actually is, where men go wrong, and exactly how to do it in a way that's attractive without being weird, confident without being arrogant, and fun without being try-hard. Let's get right to it. Flirting, at its psychological core, is a low-stakes signal of interest with built-in deniability. That last part is critical, and almost nobody talks about it. The deniability is a feature, not a bug. It allows both people to test the waters without the full social risk of a direct declaration, which is exactly why it works when it's done right, and why it collapses the moment a man treats it like a formal announcement of his feelings. Most men approach flirting as a means to an end, a transaction. They flirt because they want something to happen, and that wanting leaks through every word, every look, every slightly too long pause. Women pick this up immediately, not because they're suspicious, but because human beings are wired to detect agenda in social interactions. The moment flirting feels goal-oriented, it stops feeling fun and starts feeling like pressure. And pressure is the fastest way to make a woman emotionally check out of a conversation she was previously enjoying. Research in evolutionary psychology consistently shows that effective flirting signals social intelligence more than physical attraction. Women aren't just responding to what's being said, they're responding to how comfortable, calibrated, and self-assured a man is while saying it. A man who can be playfully suggestive without needing a reaction is communicating something very specific about his confidence level. His validation isn't on the table. He's enjoying the conversation regardless of where it goes. The other massive mistake men make is confusing flirting with complimenting. Compliments aren't flirting. Telling a woman she's beautiful within the first 3 minutes is just an observation she's probably heard 14 times this week. It puts her on a pedestal and him in a position of someone seeking approval. Flirting operates sideways. It creates a dynamic, a little tension, a shared energy. It's less, "you're amazing," and more, "I'm onto you, and you know it." The second, a man understands that flirting is about energy and dynamic rather than words and compliments, the whole thing becomes significantly less complicated. Now let's talk about the creepy lines, what crosses it and why. Because nobody actually wakes up and decides to be creepy. Most men who come across as unsettling in flirting situations genuinely believe they're being charming. The disconnect isn't about intention, it's about calibration. And calibration is something a lot of men have never been explicitly taught. The creepy feeling a woman gets isn't random. It has a psychological basis rooted in threat detection. When someone's behavior feels unpredictable, when their intensity doesn't match the current level of intimacy in the interaction, or when they seem indifferent to her comfort, the brain flags it. Not as rudeness, as a potential threat. And once that flag goes up, almost nothing a man says afterward lands the way he intends it to. Intensity is the biggest culprit. A man who is too serious too fast, who holds eye contact past the point of comfort, who steers every exchange back toward how attractive he finds her, who stands slightly too close, slightly too soon. Each of these individually might be minor. Combined, they create a pattern her nervous system reads as pressure. His interest stopped feeling flattering and started feeling like a wall closing in. The other major line crosser is persistence after a signal to stop. A woman gives a short answer, turns her body slightly away, checks her phone, gives a polite laugh instead of a real one. These are social off-ramps. They're not always rejection, but they're always a request to recalibrate. The man who ignores them and keeps pushing isn't being confident. He's demonstrating that her comfort is less important than his goal. That's where charming officially exits the building. What keeps a man on the right side of the line is simple, but requires genuine self-awareness. He stays more focused on the quality of the interaction than the outcome of it. The moment her enjoyment of the conversation becomes his actual priority rather than a side note, his entire energy shifts. And she feels that shift immediately. If there's one thing that separates men who are genuinely good at flirting from men who just think they are, it's this: playfulness. Not jokes, not humor performed for an audience. Actual, spontaneous, low-ego playfulness that makes an interaction feel like a game two people are playing together rather than a presentation one person is giving to the other. Men underestimate this constantly. Somewhere along the way, a lot of guys decided that being serious, intense, and deeply interested was the path to attraction. And while depth has its place, leading with heaviness in early flirting is like showing up to a casual lunch with a PowerPoint. Nobody asked for that. The energy doesn't match the moment. Playfulness works because it triggers a specific psychological response. It lowers defenses. When a conversation feels light and unpredictable in a fun way, people relax. And a relaxed woman is an engaged woman. She's no longer evaluating the interaction from a cautious distance. She's actually in it. That shift from guarded to present is entirely created by the energy a man brings, and playfulness is the fastest way to get there. Teasing is the most effective form of this when it's done correctly. The key distinction is that good teasing is about the dynamic between two people, not about making someone feel small. Teasing a woman about something she said, lightly challenging an opinion she holds, pretending to be offended by something completely harmless. This creates a back and forth that feels alive. It communicates that he's paying attention, that he's quick, and that he's not desperately trying to impress her. His ego isn't fragile enough to need the conversation to go smoothly. The men who get permanently stuck in the friend zone are almost always the ones who are too agreeable, too careful, and too afraid of disrupting the comfort of an interaction. They're pleasant. They're safe. And safe, unfortunately, is not the same as attractive. Playfulness introduces just enough unpredictability to keep her genuinely curious about what he's going to say next. And that curiosity is where attraction quietly takes root. Now let's talk about body language. Before a man opens his mouth, she's already formed an impression. Not consciously, not deliberately. Her brain did it automatically, the same way it processes whether a room feels safe or uncomfortable before she can explain why. Body language in flirting isn't a supporting act. It's the main event, and the words are just backup. Posture is the first thing that registers. A man who walks into a space taking up his full physical presence, shoulders back, movement unhurried, not constantly adjusting or fidgeting, reads as someone who is comfortable in his own skin. That comfort is attractive independent of anything else. Contrast that with the man who's slightly hunched, moving quickly like he's trying not to be noticed, touching his face every 30 seconds. His body is broadcasting anxiety whether he's aware of it or not. She's aware of it. Eye contact in flirting operates on a specific frequency. Too little, and he seems disinterested or insecure. Too much without any break becomes intense and uncomfortable. The sweet spot is engaged but relaxed, holding contact naturally during conversation, breaking it occasionally without urgency, and re-establishing it with ease. When a man can hold eye contact while smiling without it feeling like a staring contest, that alone communicates a level of confidence most men never actually reach. Vocal tone is criminally underrated. The same sentence delivered in a slightly lower, slower, more relaxed voice lands completely differently than the same words rushed out at a higher pitch. Nervousness speeds speech up and raises pitch, both of which are audible. A man who speaks at his natural pace, with pauses he's actually comfortable with, sounds self-possessed. Silence doesn't make him scramble to fill it. That stillness reads as strength. Proximity matters too, not in a calculated inch-by-inch way, but as a natural reflection of how the conversation is progressing. Leaning in slightly when she says something interesting, not because it's a technique, but because he's genuinely engaged, creates warmth without pressure. His body language should always be saying one thing consistently. He's present, he's comfortable, and he's not auditioning. The difference between a flirty comment that lands and one that makes everything weird isn't always the comment itself. It's when it was said. Timing in flirting is everything, and it's the variable most men either completely ignore or have no framework for reading correctly. Timing starts with recognizing whether a woman is actually open to being flirted with in the first place. This sounds obvious, but gets skipped constantly. A woman who is visibly distracted, mid-task, in a rushed energy, or giving short-clipped responses, is not in a receptive headspace. And attempting to flirt with her in that state doesn't just fail, it registers as tone-deaf. Her brain files it under, "He wasn't paying attention to me at all. He was just running his own agenda." Not ideal. Emotional attunement is the skill underneath timing. It's the ability to read where someone actually is emotionally in a given moment, rather than where a man wishes they were. When a conversation has natural warmth and back and forth, when she's asking questions and her body is oriented toward him, when the responses are getting longer and more engaged. That's the green light. Flirting in that window feels like a natural extension of the energy that's already present. It doesn't feel inserted. Escalation timing matters just as much. Flirting has a natural progression. It starts light, gets slightly more personal as comfort builds, and deepens as genuine connection develops. Men who try to skip steps, going from a first exchange to heavily loaded comments too quickly, create a jarring tonal shift that she feels immediately. It's like skipping 4 chapters in a book and wondering why the story doesn't make sense. The callback is one of the most underused timing tools available. Referencing something she said earlier in the conversation in a playful way shows he was actually listening. And that kind of attentiveness is rare enough that it genuinely stands out. It rewards her for being interesting, which makes her want to keep being interesting. That loop, when it gets going, is exactly what makes a conversation impossible to walk away from. So how can you actually keep her interested for long without trying too hard? There's a reason some men seem to effortlessly hold a woman's attention, while others, despite doing everything right, watch interest slowly drain out of the conversation like water through a cracked glass. The difference almost always comes down to one thing: tension. Specifically, the kind of tension created by push-pull dynamics, which is arguably the most psychologically sophisticated tool in flirting and also the most misunderstood. Push-pull is not a manipulation tactic. It's a reflection of how genuine attraction actually works neurologically. The brain releases dopamine not in response to consistent reward, but in response to variable reward. The same neurological system that makes gambling addictive is the one that makes unpredictable, playful conversation so compelling. When a man is warm, then slightly teasing, then genuinely interested, then casually indifferent, that variation keeps her nervous system engaged in a way that straight, predictable niceness simply cannot. The pull is easy for most men, showing interest, being warm, giving attention. The push is where they fall apart. Not because they don't know how, but because it feels risky. Pulling back slightly, disagreeing with something she said, being playfully dismissive of a compliment she gives, ending a conversation at its peak rather than running it into the ground. These moves feel counterintuitive to a man who's operating from a scarcity mindset. His anxiety whispers that any reduction in effort will cost him the interaction. So he keeps pulling, keeps giving, keeps complimenting. And she gets bored because there's no resistance, no texture, nothing to push against. Validation seeking is the fastest way to flatten this dynamic entirely. The man who laughs too hard at things that aren't funny, agrees with opinions he doesn't actually hold, and bends his personality to match her preferences, has essentially removed himself from the equation. He's no longer a person she's talking to. He's a mirror reflecting her back at herself. That might feel safe to him, but it's conversationally dead. The man who holds his own opinions stays genuinely unbothered by her reactions and treats the interaction as something he's enjoying rather than something he's trying to win. That man has the dynamic completely in his favor without doing anything that could reasonably be called trying too hard. Effortlessness, it turns out, is just confidence that stopped needing applause. Flirting isn't a skill reserved for naturally charming men who were born knowing what to say. It's a set of behaviors, readable, learnable, and completely available to any man willing to get out of his own head long enough to actually be present in a conversation. Stop performing. Stop complimenting too early. Stop treating every interaction like the outcome determines your worth. Read the room. Bring playful energy. Let your body language do half the work, and understand that the man who needs it least always gets it most. That's not a paradox. That's just what confidence looks like from the outside. The whole game changes when flirting stops being something a man does to a woman and starts being something he does with her. That shift in mindset is where awkward ends and genuinely attractive begins. So drop a comment below. What's the flirting mistake you've made the most? Be honest, nobody's judging here. Every comment gets a personal response because this community is built on real conversations, not just content consumption. Share this with a man who needs it, and if you haven't subscribed yet, that's the most important thing you can do right now. New videos consistently, and every single one is built to actually help.